Hello. So, have you ever changed your mind about something, about anything, and immediately you feel like you may need to defend yourself in that changing of your mind? Maybe it was a career, a goal, a relationship, a belief maybe that you've held for years. Maybe you said yes to something, and after thinking about it, you realize that you actually wanted to say no. And then somebody says something like, "Well, wait a minute, I thought you wanted this," or "That's not what you used to say," or "That's not how you used to feel." And suddenly you feel like you owe them an explanation. But here's a question I want you to think about. When did changing your mind actually become a weakness? Let's talk about it. Somehow, we've started treating consistency as proof of strength. We admire people who stick to their decisions, who stay the course, who don't quit. And there's absolutely something to be said for perseverance, no doubt. But there's another side to that conversation that we don't talk about nearly enough. Sometimes you learn something. Sometimes circumstances change. Sometimes you change. And when that happens, continuing down the same path simply because you chose it years ago or months ago isn't necessarily strength. Sometimes it's just stubbornness. So, why do we sometimes feel like changing our minds is a weakness or look down upon changing our minds? Well, first, let's think about how we change our minds and what prompts that anyway. So, you might have made that decision with what you knew then. So, think about a major decision you made 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Were you the same person you are today? I'm guessing you probably aren't. Did you have the same experiences, the same priorities, the same relationships, even the same responsibilities? Probably not. Did you know everything then that you know now? Again, probably not. So why do we sometimes believe the person we are today owes this like lifelong loyalty to a decision made by the person we were back then? Maybe the decision wasn't wrong. Maybe it was exactly the right version of that decision for your life at that time. And that's important. Change your mind today doesn't automatically mean you made a mistake yesterday. It might simply mean something has changed and you're finally willing to acknowledge it. There's also another trap in there of changing our minds or willingness to change our minds, which is this I've already come this far, or sort of that sunk cost fallacy. I've already dug in so deeply into this. And this is really where things get difficult, actually really difficult. Because sometimes we've invested a lot into the thing we're considering. Years, money, education, energy, relationships, reputation. And we start telling ourselves, I've already put 10 years into this, or I've spent too much money, or I've worked so hard already. I've already told everyone this is what I'm going to do. I can't quit now. And I understand that. I think most people would understand that. Walking away from something you've invested heavily in can feel like admitting all that investment was wasted. But I want to give you a different question, a coaching question, since I'm a coach. And I think it's one word that you should really think about sitting with. Knowing what you know today, would you still choose this? Not did this make sense 5 years ago? Not how much have I already invested? Not what will everyone think? Knowing everything you know right now, would you choose that again? Because sometimes we're so busy protecting yesterday's decision that we forget we're still making a decision today. Every day you continue is another choice to make. Sometimes when it comes to changing our minds, we're actually protecting an identity. And I think there's something even deeper happening sometimes in that case. We're not actually protecting the decision, we're protecting that identity that we've attached to that decision. Maybe you've spent years saying, I'm an executive, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm the strong one. I've heard that before. I'm the person everyone can count on, I'm someone who never quits, or even I've always believed this. Those things become part of how we understand ourselves. So changing direction isn't just about changing what we're doing, it can feel like we're changing who we are. And that's scary, really scary. Because if I'm not that anymore, who am I? But growth requires us to occasionally examine the labels we've given ourselves. Some will still fit, some won't. And we don't have to keep wearing something simply because it used to fit us so well. But there is an important difference. I want to make that very clear. Because changing our mind isn't automatically growth either. Sometimes things get hard and we want out, just want to bail. Sometimes we're uncomfortable, we're frustrated, sometimes we're afraid that we're going to fail. And suddenly changing direction looks pretty appealing because I want to avoid that discomfort. And that's different. Growth is uncomfortable, learning is uncomfortable, healthy relationships can be uncomfortable. Building something worthwhile can be incredibly uncomfortable. So the question isn't simply, do I still want to do this? I think the better question is, am I changing direction because this is difficult or because it genuinely no longer aligns with who I am and where I want to go? It's a much harder question to ask, or sorry, to answer, because sometimes the answer is, this is difficult, but I still need to keep going. And sometimes the answer is no, I've learned enough to know that this isn't where I belong anymore, or this isn't who I belong with anymore. Wisdom is truly learning to recognize the difference. Changing your opinion counts too. And this isn't only about a big life decision. Sometimes it's simply about being willing to change your opinion in general. We live in a world where people can pull up something you said 10 years ago and ask, well, why didn't you believe that anymore? Maybe because you learned something, maybe you listened to someone, maybe you had an experience that challenged what you thought you knew. Maybe somebody presented evidence you hadn't considered before. But isn't that what we want people to do? We shouldn't be embarrassed when better information changes our thinking. We should be concerned when no amount of information ever could. Being open minded doesn't mean believing everything, it means being secure enough in yourself to admit, I might not have this completely right. That's not weakness, that's humility. Also, you don't have to make your past self wrong to change your mind, which is another piece that I think it really matters. You don't have to hate your old life just to choose a different one. You don't have to regret a career to leave it. You don't have to pretend a relationship meant nothing because it ended. You don't have to dismiss an old goal because you want something different now. And you don't have to ridicule the person you used to be because you believe something different today. Maybe that career taught you something. That relationship may have shaped you. Maybe that goal pushed you. Maybe that belief made sense based on what you understood at the time. You can appreciate what something gave you and still decide you're finished carrying it forward. Both things can be true. So here's the idea I kind of want you to take away from this conversation. Changing your mind isn't always inconsistency. Sometimes it's evidence that you've grown. You don't owe lifelong loyalty to a decision made by a version of you that had less information than you have today. But you do owe yourself the honesty to examine why you're considering something different. Are you running from discomfort or are you responding to growth? Are you afraid or have your priorities genuinely changed? Are you quitting or are you finally paying attention? Only you can answer those questions. So I want you to think about something in your own life. Ask yourself a few of these powerful questions. First, what decision am I continuing to defend simply because I made it a long time ago? Next question is, knowing what I know today, would I make the same choice again? Third question I want you to ask yourself is, am I saying because it's right or because changing direction would require admitting I've changed myself? Also, what part of my identity have I attached to this decision? And maybe the hardest one that I can throw at you now, what would I choose if I didn't have to explain my decision to anyone else? You don't necessarily need to change anything. The goal isn't to convince yourself to leave. The goal is simply to give yourself permission to ask the question. Because sometimes staying is absolutely the right decision. But if you're going to stay, let it be because you're choosing it today, not simply because you chose it yesterday. Changing your mind doesn't erase the person that you were when you made the original decision. Maybe that decision was exactly what you needed at the time. Maybe it brought you here to where you are today. Maybe you needed that version of yourself to become this version of yourself. You don't have to declare your past self wrong in order to choose something different today. Sometimes growth isn't proving you were right. That sometimes growth is being willing to be wrong. And maybe changing your mind isn't a sign that you don't know who you are. Maybe it's evidence that you're still becoming who you're supposed to be. Hey, if this conversation resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What's something you've changed your mind about as far as you've gotten older? Could be anything really. And what taught you to see it differently? If you found today's discussion valuable, consider subscribing and joining me for more conversations. Please Smash that like button. And until next time, you guys take care of yourselves and have a good one.